Ew. Huh? Oh.
Hey, welcome to the Men's Room. I'm your host, Mark Sparks, and today we're going to be talking about inner game. I'd like to welcome back Frank B. Kermit. Frank, good to have you on the show again, man.
Mark, pleasure to be back.
Awesome. So I'm going to cut to the chase, and I want you to get right into it. What is inner game?
All right. Inner game at its root is figuring out who you are as a person. And I know it sounds very cliche, but the fact is most men don't know what it is they want. And if they don't know what they want, it doesn't matter how much they study, and it doesn't matter who they seek out as a mentor. If you don't know what you want, you won't be able to get it.
How does one go about figuring out what it is they want? Are you talking about being as specific as, I want a, let's talk about women per se. I want a girl who is 5'5" with this. Is that what you're talking about when you're saying getting ready and knowing what you want?
The more specific you are, the better. However, you also have to be realistic. You have to look at things like the values that the person has, not necessarily what the person looks like. Now, if you have a particular fetish or you have a particular type of woman, sure, you can possibly go after that type of woman and eventually find somebody else that meets the rest of your criteria.
Right.
However, you don't start off just by saying, well, I want a girl who looks like X, Y, and Z. Tell me about the values you have. What type of lifestyle do you want? Day-to-day routines. And literally sit down and write it out if you haven't thought about it. Do you want to have a business from home and have that kind of lifestyle? Do you want to be the type of person who can travel on a vacation for 3 months out of the year? These are the types of things you have to look at.
Right.
You have to also find a woman that wants the same things as you do. When I lived at Montreal and I knew that I wanted to move to Toronto, one of the questions that I would ask every single girl I dated was, have you ever thought about leaving Montreal? And I would bring it up very casually in the course of any conversation. Now, if she says, well, no, I never want to leave Montreal, I already know she's not the type of person I could have as a wife or a harem primary. But could I have a one-night stand with her? Sure. Could I have her as a sex buddy? No problem. Have her as a non-exclusive girlfriend? I'm there. But would I ever even consider her for a wife? No, because I know who it is I am.
Right. The precursor to a relationship, meeting
Right.
somebody. So how do I break that same, maybe every time I walk up to a girl,
You start getting the nerves.
I get that nervousness, and my inner game, in my head, I'm start telling, I can't talk to her. She's too good for me. She'll say no. She has a boyfriend. All those, lines that we give ourselves.
Yeah.
How do I break that pattern as I walk up to her?
Here's how you break the pattern. You don't try to control the feeling. You control the behavior. What do most guys do at that point? They try to control the emotion.
Right.
Okay, I'm feeling nervous. Stop feeling nervous. Stop feeling nervous. That don't work.
Right, because you're going to feel nervous regardless.
Exactly. So what you need to do is that, okay, I'm feeling nervous. When I feel nervous, what am I supposed to do? I have to go up and say hello and pay a compliment. Every time you feel nervous, you are now training yourself for a new behavior. You're still feeling nervous, but rather than try to control the emotion, which doesn't work for men, what happens is that the emotion gets suppressed and it comes out in other ways, in other forms of dysfunction. Feel the emotion, but you still have to control the behavior. So I might still really, really feel nervous, but the fact is I've given myself a new behavior, and the behavior is I'm going to go up and say, hi, I saw you from over there, and I just want to compliment you. I think that's a stunning dress. Does that mean I'm going to get the phone number? No. Does that mean I'm going to get laid? Hardly.
Right.
What it means is I am now breaking that negative behavior pattern and replacing it with a positive behavior pattern. In the short term, you are still going to feel the negative emotion, but you'll have a new behavior to play with. In the long term, your new behavior will become your new instinct so that you don't have time to feel nervous anymore.
Because you just naturally do the
right behavior.
I mean, it's a big jump from meeting a woman to having a harem.
That's right.
So what are some of the behaviors leading to that?
When I was a loser and I would go to a house party,
Yeah.
I'd start getting a panic attack because there's all these people around. There's all these other energies. Oh, are they going to like me? Are they going to hate me? What's going to happen to me? I don't feel safe here. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. The heart starts pounding, and you get a panic attack. So what I would do is I'd go hide in a room somewhere. Maybe if I'm at the person's house, I'd try to find the room that has books in it, and I'd read my books. And when it was time to leave the party, then I would leave the party, but alone, and nobody got to know me, and I didn't get to know anybody.
Right.
So let's see. I know that that's what I do. That's what Frank does. What would Kermit do when I was looking to develop my instincts? I would play with different behaviors. The first behavior I did is that I would go up and offer people to do palmistry for them. I actually bought a book on palmistry. I studied it. And I would start, okay, I'm just going to start reading palms. That's the new behavior.
So you learned how to do that just to be able to use it as a behavior.
Absolutely. So what I would do, I would go to these parties. Wouldn't you know it? I started reading palms. Next thing you know, every house party I go to, that's all I do. I'm just the palm reading guy. I'll be sitting there, I'll be with a girl, I'm reading her hand, everything's going good. There's a lineup of people coming in because they want me to read their palms too. But I wasn't getting any dates.
Right.
Because I was just the palm reader guy. But after I finished reading a girl's palm, and it's like, hey, so you want to go grab a punch or you want to go grab a drink or something? Oh, I can't. I got to go do this. She runs off, and before I could chase her, some other girl says, oh, do me next. Now, at the time, having a number of women coming up to me and saying, please do me next, that was a nice feeling.
Right, which is still a step in the right direction.
Exactly. I'm getting attention. I'm starting, I'm holding these women's hands. I'm getting to feel what it's like to massage their skin. I'm having conversations with women. I'm finding out, when I talk about such and such topics, like emotionally based topics, they actually respond better than if I'm just talking about random logical topics and statistics. Once I got comfortable with the idea that, okay, now I know I can talk to women, now I know I can touch their hands and it's not a big deal, but that behavior still wasn't getting me what I wanted, so I tried a different behavior. Now this one did work. I make homemade wine with my brother and my brother-in-law. So I'll show up to a party with a bottle of homemade wine. And instead of going up to people and saying, well, can I read your palm? I was going up to them saying, excuse me, I'm one of the people here at the party. Can I offer you a sip of homemade wine? They start asking me about the wine, how I made it. Right. Next thing I know, I'm now in conversation with these people. It's a new behavior.
Right.
But they also see me now as a social person. Wow, I make wine with my family, brings up the fact that I have some family values, I have some family ties.
Right.
And through that, I actually started to meet women who I could potentially and actually did date. That's how I got one of my harem girls. Just because I approached her, offered her some wine, we started a conversation that way. Didn't cost me anything because it was all homemade wine. But just the fact that sparked a great conversation and I really clicked with her, she became one of my lovers. Play with different behaviors. Once the behavior gives you repeated results, that's when it becomes a belief.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah, in inner game talk, we often talk about you have to have a belief. You have to be confident. You got to believe that you are of value. Well, how do you do that for a guy who's never been able to feel confident about women to begin with?
Because you're not just it doesn't just materialize.
Exactly. So what I do with my guys, because this is the process I went through, I give them specific behaviors for them to enact. Once they go through the behaviors, same way I went through my palmistry behaviors, I got to the point where I was like, hey, you know what? It's okay just to talk to people and have fun. It's okay to hold hands. I got through that. And that gave me the belief that says, wow, people do find me interesting enough to start a conversation with me.
Right.
I take that belief and now I apply it to a new behavior, and again, a new behavior, and again, you keep applying it to new behaviors. Wow, I'm now dating 3 or 4 people. What behavior am I going to practice with the 3 girls that I'm dating now? Okay, I'll invite them over and I'll make them dinner and we'll do the dishes together. Let's see what happens there. You try that behavior, you see what kind of a result you get. Then you try a different behavior. Okay, we'll have dinner at my place, but I will not allow them to do the dishes at my place and see what kind of a result I get.
Right.
From the results you get from these repeated behaviors, that's where you start building your beliefs. Now I believe that the best thing that I can do when I bring a woman over for dinner is not allow her to do my dishes, because I have the experience that says it got me better results time and time again. That's when it becomes a belief.
Right.
When does a belief become an instinct? When you stop thinking about it consciously.
And it's just a second nature do.
Exactly. So I'll get to the point where I'll invite a girl over for dinner. I won't be thinking consciously, if I don't let her do my dishes, she's going to feel more like my lover and less like my mother. I'm no longer in my own head.
It's just an action.
Exactly. And I'm not even thinking about, I have to remember to do that, because now it's become an instinct.
Right.
It's become a habit. That's the process. One of the reasons that we go through this inner game process is that we don't waste time with people who are not going to be there for us long term. We put our focus on the people who actually matter. So let's say it's a girl who I should have only had as a sex buddy, and she says to me one day, I'd really like us to have something more serious. If I've asked her those type of questions, and I already know she's not wife material, guess what? I wouldn't even entertain the idea, and I'll let her know. I'm sorry, I just don't see us going there. And you would be surprised that the more honest you are with women that way, the more they tend to stick around. One of the reasons that when I met my wife, and we had our first date that lasted 36 hours, and I knew by hour number 26 that she was going to be the woman I was going to marry, because I knew who I was. I knew exactly what I'm looking for. And when I'm testing her on all these things and she's giving me all the right answers, and I'm like, okay, check that off, check that off, check that off, check that off. Whoa, I've got wife material here.
Right, so you're just throwing your tests out there and getting back what you want based on knowing what you were looking for.
That's right. You have to know who you are and what you want long term, and find somebody who can match that particular lifestyle. So you start with your values, and one of the easiest ways to start on the inner game path is to at least identify what you don't want. Start off by saying things like, I do not want to marry a smoker.
Okay.
Now that's a very specific thing, and by identifying what you don't want, it at least eliminates a lot of the options for you so you can focus on the things you do want. You have to be with a woman that wants to be with a man, the same way that she needs to be with a man who wants to be with a woman.
Right, and it sounds very, very simple, but it's something that we never, a lot of guys miss or don't look at.
Well, sure, because as long as, what do most guys look at? Well, she's got to be hot. Yeah, if she's hot and she's putting it out, that's cool. Well, great, but in about 10 years from now, you'll be another statistic in divorce, because it takes more than just a hot girl who's putting out.
Okay, and what else can I do to kind of work on my inner game?
Well, let's say you want to build up your own self-esteem. You want to feel good about yourself and recognize that you also bring a value to every relationship you go into. One of the writing exercises that I take my guys through is called Why the Man is the Prize. And you come up with 25 reasons why you should feel good about yourself. And we break these down. What's the very first reason why a man should feel that he's the prize? He was born a man. And I know that seems like, well, that's duh. Of course he was born a man. There's so many self-hating males out there. They can't stand the idea of what is associated with a stereotypical man. The fact that he's going to be more aggressive, and the fact that, he's going to be very driven and maybe overly ambitious. But these are things that a man must embrace about himself. The first reason why anybody should feel good about themselves is to recognize that just the fact that they're alive, they're born, whatever their gender is, you have to be proud of that. You have to embrace that. When I deal with guys who, let's say, are really struggling in even asking a girl out on a date, most of the time I find out they have an incredible amount of self-hatred, and they hate themselves for being men. So if you really want to get your inner game together, start identifying what your beliefs are. And then once you're listing your beliefs, and again, you have to write it down. This is not something that you can do, oh, well, gee, I'm going to theorize, and I'm going to think, and I'm going to keep it all up here. No.
And what do you write down? Like, I believe.
Okay, for this example, what are your beliefs about what it means to be a man? What are your beliefs about what it means to be a woman? What are your beliefs about the dynamics within relationships? To be in a relationship means what? When I get guys to do these type of exercises, let's say I'm dealing with a guy who's a 27-year-old virgin, never been on a date, never kissed a girl, and I get him to write down, well, what is a relationship? Just off the top of your head, don't even think about it, just write and write and write. He has things written on his paper such as relationships are bad, relationships are prison, relationships cause pain, relationships make children cry. Because those are his immediate associations with relationships.
Right.
So is it any wonder that this guy who's been studying community material for 3 or 4 years still hasn't had a first successful relationship? It's not the material that's failing. It's because in his own mind, he has associated relationships with something that is going to bring him pain.
So he doesn't really want it, even though he's saying that's what he wants.
Exactly. Or maybe he really does want it, but his attitudes towards relationships are so negative that even if he gets what he wants, he'll destroy it. He'll sabotage it.
Purposely, because...
Exactly.
Wow.
One of the biggest elements of inner game, if we really want to delve deep here, okay, it's something called creative avoidance, where a person will go out of their way to put obstacles on their path so that they don't achieve what it is they want. And that's because they have associated with getting what they want as an item of pain. Most men, in this case, will fear intimacy. They have a deep fear of intimacy, or they will have, let's say, a negative pattern of behavior. Let's say you grew up in a household that was dysfunctional,
Right.
where your parents were constantly at each other's throats, and even though intellectually you know that real love isn't fighting and being at each other's throats every day, real love is when you can actually have some measure of peace in your relationship on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
That's intellectual. Emotionally speaking, though, you will respond to people who will enact the same type of patterns of behavior that you are used to. Now, what happens when a guy who comes from that type of background ends up in a really solid relationship with a woman, where, my God, where things are peaceful, it's not so difficult, we're getting along. Wow. But his subconscious says, wait a minute, this isn't what I'm used to. So he'll start causing problems in that relationship so that he can enact the same negative patterns of behavior
That he's used to.
So part of inner game is to look at that and say, now wait a minute, if this is what you want, you need to break the negative patterns of behavior. Think of an addiction,
Okay.
all right? Let's say somebody's addicted to smoking and they want to stop smoking. You can sit at home and think, I will not smoke, I will not smoke, I will not smoke. But that's only going to work so far until the craving starts hitting you. When do you start breaking that pattern of behavior? When you're reaching for the cigarette and you're lighting it, and that's when you say no, and you put it out. You are now creating a new behavior. You're breaking the old pattern. The old pattern is grab a cigarette, light it, smoke. Now you're grabbing a cigarette, you're lighting it, but instead of smoking, you're putting it out. You're committing a new behavior.
Right.
That's what's going to break the old patterns of behavior. You do the same thing in relationships. You get into a good relationship when you start seeing that, oh my God, I'm starting to do things that are turning this relationship just as dysfunctional as the relationship I grew up in. That's when you got to say no and find a new behavior. Every time you want to turn your relationship dysfunctional, go rent a DVD. Every time you want to turn your relationship dysfunctional, take her out for a walk instead.
So just focus on a new behavior every time you are about to get into the old one.
That's right. In time, once you clear up your own hypocrisies, once you clear up your own stuff, and you have a more, I guess, potent vibe would be a word for it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Okay. Once you have that vibe going on, you get rejected a lot less, but that's not because you're approaching less. It's not because you are approaching more. It's because you started to focus in and you're starting to pick up on signals that people are giving off, the type of signals that you already know. You have that feeling that, I have a better chance of making something happen with that other person.
And that just takes time.
It's going to take time. It's going to take time. The fact is, the biggest difference between somebody who's got his inner game together and a guy who's really struggling, the biggest difference between the two of them, instincts. You see, the natural has instincts that the loser, for lack of a better term, doesn't have. A loser just simply doesn't have the instincts in order to know what to do and when to do it when it comes to attracting women. If you just do random approaches, and I'm going to approach that girl and that girl and that girl and that girl, and the first few girls will see that you're approaching some other girl right in front of them, and the girls you're about to approach just saw you approach the women previous. You're just doing a number of random approaches. The fact is, the only women who you're going to be able to get at that point are the women who already liked you. Maybe they liked your look, maybe they liked your style of dress, maybe they liked the way you approached, but they've already liked you ahead of time.
So there's nothing that you've done.
That's right.
Okay.
Now then, what do most absolute naturals do? They'll walk into a room and they're not going to approach everybody. They will put out a vibe. And just on the vibe, they'll be able to pick out, you know what, that's someone I could connect with tonight. That's someone who's looking for a sex partner tonight. That person over there is someone who I think I would really vibe with. So they will only approach those people who are giving off some sort of a vibe themselves that they gel with.
Yeah.
So they'll be doing, let's say both people in this, the guy who's doing the random approaches and the natural who's doing some more focused intention. They can approach the same number of women. It is the natural who's actually going to hook up with more women, just because he is focusing on those women who would already be receptive to him.
Right, as opposed to just randomly.
That's right. Now, how does somebody go from this point where they're just approaching randomly to getting to the point where they can focus in? Once you start doing it a number of times, and yes, you are going to have to handle more rejection. And no, it doesn't feel good. And you know what? I don't care what anybody says. I still haven't gotten used to the idea of rejection. It still hurts. It doesn't feel good.
Right.
I just take it and say, you know what? Got rejected. Move on. Find someone else.
Right. And that's what you have to do.
That's right. That's my whole thing. When I take a guy from no inner game to having a complete inner game, I don't focus on trying to make him feel better. Because the fact is, you don't control emotions. You can influence emotions. I can do things now that might influence your emotions, but they can't control your emotions because I don't know what your experiences are. I don't know how you happen to be feeling today. But I do control 100%. I control my own behaviors. And as long as I can control my behaviors and direct my behaviors to doing the right thing, even when I don't feel like doing it, long term, those new behaviors that I'm experimenting with become my instinct. They truly change my belief system because I say, wow, I've committed this behavior. I now believe that when I commit this behavior, I'll get this result. New belief system.
Right. And new beliefs lead to a new instinct.
Yeah.
Awesome. Frank B. Kermit, pleasure to have you out again, man. Thanks a lot.
Anytime, Mark.
All right, guys, let's take a look at our 5 takeaway points from Frank. Point number 1, inner game is all about figuring out who you are and what you want. Start by figuring out what you don't want and go backwards from there. Remember, be specific and realistic. Point number 2, you need to understand that you bring value to a relationship and start looking at yourself as the prize. Identify beliefs that may be holding you back and beware of creative avoidance. Point number 3, identify new behaviors that you can adopt into your persona. Once this behavior starts giving you consistent results, it'll become one of your beliefs. Point number 4, a belief becomes an instinct when you stop thinking about it consciously and it becomes a habit for you. Old beliefs can be changed by breaking the pattern of behavior that's associated with them. Point number 5, the biggest difference between a guy with his inner game together and a guy without is instincts. Start to hone your instincts and you'll notice a drastic change in your social skills. And remember, there's no such thing as failure, only opportunities to learn. And in life, class is always in session. I'm Mark Sparks. We'll see you next time in the men's room.